Have you ever had a dream so big it seemed impossible to reach? What should you do if nobody around believes in you? Or they try to take you down out of envy? Hi, I'm Wu Ziqian, and my story takes place some 1400 years ago in the Chinese Empire. Yet, I feel some things haven't changed much for us girls. The year I was born, a total sun eclipse darkened the sky. It was a sign of big changes, though at the time, nobody would have guessed that small, sweet Wu would be the one to make history. Growing up, life was good. I had 2 sisters and 2 older half-brothers from Dad's previous marriage. Our family was not part of the aristocratic class, but was very wealthy, which meant I didn't have to do any chores as we had staff taking care of daily activities. However, unlike other rich girls who mostly lazed off, Dad encouraged me to study from a young age. He soon realized just how smart I was, with a talent for poetry and public speaking, so he started to take me on business trips. I loved meeting new people and asked lots of questions. Yes, I was a bit unusual as a kid, but my family was very proud of me. Well, except my brothers.
Why are you studying again? You're just a girl.
And?
Your job is to get married and to have kids. Dad is wasting resources on you. Maybe he's afraid you'll never find a husband. And what's this? Oops.
And with that, he spilled ink all over my notes. One day, you'll regret being so mean. I tried avoiding them as much as possible. But then, around the time I was 14, Dad got very ill and left us. Nothing was ever the same. My brothers started acting like the bosses of the family. Without Dad to keep them in check, they became rude to Mom, bullied my sisters, and were especially mean to me. Like the time I spent too much time with a friend and was late for my curfew. It was a rainy evening. I ran back home, but the front gates were already locked. No matter how much I yelled and banged on the doors, nobody could hear me over the wind and thunder. In the end, I crouched there all night until early morning. Mom found me crying and shivering.
I'm so sorry, Wu. They told me you were back and sleeping. I should have checked.
That little adventure gave me a cold so bad I stayed in bed for a week. Without Dad, I felt powerless. I had to do something to change my fate, not only for me, but also for my mom. A chance presented itself when a beauty contest was held in town. The winner would be taken to serve at the palace. It was a huge deal and a way to gain respect and admiration. Mom was worried about my plan, and her fears came true when I won. Honestly, it wasn't that big of a surprise, being not only the prettiest girl in town, but also well-educated. My brothers just scoffed at the news and said they won't miss me. Typical. Mom helped me pack my things, and on the day of my departure, she cried as we hugged. Don't be sad, Mother. Who's to say it isn't my fate to meet the Emperor? And so, she understood. I wasn't going to the palace to escape my problems. No, I had a bigger plan. A hope to get noticed by the Emperor, maybe one day marrying into the royal family. Something to bring honor to my name. But my life in the palace started on the wrong foot. The Emperor took a quick glance at me and decided I'll be doing laundry? I didn't spend my childhood reading the classics and refining my calligraphy for this. One day, I was trying to get inside the palace library, but the guard wouldn't let me in, questioning if I could even read. Are you kidding? I was composing poetry at 6. Give me some books or I'll report you to the Emperor. Just then, the guard went pale looking behind me. I turned and, oh my, the Emperor had heard it all. He seemed amused and I just doubled down, following him around the library all afternoon. By the end of the day, he was so impressed by my wit and education that he made me his secretary. Finally, that was my chance to work my way up the political ladder until, a decade later, nothing has changed. I'm a forgotten secretary. Then, the Emperor passed away and I got sent to a Buddhist convent to be a nun. All that time spent in the palace led nowhere. They even shaved my head. But not all was lost. You see, while I was living at the palace, I got close to the Emperor's youngest son, Li. We met one random day when I was holding a bowl for him to clean his hands, and he flicked some water at me. Offended by his childish behavior, I was ready to give him a lecture. His shy smile and cute face melted my rage. So refreshing. It's quite a warm day, isn't it? He laughed and we started chatting, quickly becoming friends. We were close in age, and unlike other officials, he was kind and humble, easy to talk to.
Do you ever regret coming to the palace? You probably miss your family.
I do. Well, everyone except my brothers. Those 2 I would banish to the corner of the empire, never to be seen again.
I get that. My brothers either pretend I don't exist or act as if I'm beneath them. You think 2 are bad? Try living with 13.
Can't you do something about them? You are a prince after all.
It's just a title. You'll learn it in time. Having a title doesn't necessarily mean the same as having power.
I knew what he meant. Lee, being the youngest, had 0 chances of succeeding his father. However, fate really had a sense of humor. Turns out, his brothers were so busy fighting each other over the title of crown prince that the emperor decided Lee was the better candidate for the throne. And that's how my decade-long crush became the new emperor. He actually changed his name to Gaozong, but I'll keep calling him Lee to avoid confusion. I was genuinely happy for him, even if my new status as nun meant we could never be together. One day, I wrote a poem about how much I missed him and took a chance sending it to the palace. Maybe he wouldn't even have time to read it, but I had to try. To my surprise, it worked, and Lee came to the temple.
I got your letter. Is it true?
Tears started rolling down my cheeks as I nodded. We hugged, and when it was time for us to part, I could see he was reluctant to do so. Could it be that my feelings were reciprocated? Indeed, he kept visiting, and one evening, I got a note saying I could grow my hair again. 1 year later, I was summoned back to the palace. There, I met Lady Wang, who was quite a big name in court. She was to become empress, having been chosen as a consort by Lee's father himself. But that didn't mean things between them were all rosy and peachy.
I had meetings all day, and when I finally got the chance to relax at dinner, Wang started talking about more political issues. It's the last thing I want during my free time.
Is that why you're hiding in the stables with me?
Not hiding, just surveying your work.
Truly, some things never change. Lee was the most powerful person in the empire, yet his life was affected by so many people's influence and choices. I decided to be by his side the best I could, and in time, everyone started noticing how close we were, including Wang. That's when she showed her true colors. One afternoon, she invited me for tea.
Tell me about your family. I heard your dad got lucky during the rebellion, but he wasn't aristocracy.
My mom is.
Ah, yes. And what did she accomplish? Only had daughters and is not well liked by her stepsons? How disgraceful.
What is your point, Lady Wang?
I'm just reminding you of your place. The only reason you've been called back was so the Emperor wouldn't have to visit that nunnery all the time. But do not be mistaken. You are not part of this world.
And then she started giving me so much work I couldn't keep up with it, and then complained about how lazy I was. Little did she know, I was used to palace drama and was prepared to face much worse. One day, Lee surprised me with a beautiful hairpin with pearls and small gold lotus flowers. I was walking back to my chambers holding the small present when I noticed Lady Wang scolding a maid for spilling some water on her dress. The poor girl ran with tears in her eyes, and I felt my blood boil. I knew what it meant to be beneath those of higher rank, both at home and at the palace. But then I got an idea. I followed the maid and gave her the hairpin. Lady Wu, I can't accept it. Sure you can. I want you to feel better. But I could never repay you. Just tell me the gossip you hear around the court. That's all I want. And so, I started befriending servants and lower officials in exchange for news. Soon, I had ears and allies everywhere. And that's how I found out Wang's envy ran deeper than anyone imagined. That night, I ran to Emperor Lee. You have to come with me. Now, we silently walked through empty corridors, and I told Lee to wait outside as I marched into Wang's chambers. There, as the informer said, she was performing some sort of ritual with a voodoo doll shaped like me. I knew you were a witch, but this? Why stoop so low?
Why? You spend too much time with the Emperor. I have to stop you.
Just then, Lee walked into the room.
Lady Wang, I'm very disappointed. You are far from the noble woman I thought I'd marry.
She threw herself on her knees, begging for forgiveness, but it was no use. Witchcraft was a serious charge at the time, so Lee banished her from the palace. Soon after that, Lee confessed his feelings, and I was made the official consort, the new empress. But, as Lee said years ago, a title alone doesn't mean power, and that became clear to me while I kept listening to the emperor's meetings with his advisors. I sat, as usual, in a small room behind a curtain of pearls, voicing my opinion when needed. The times my husband was ill, he trusted me to make decisions in his place, and some of his officials were seriously offended by this.
It feels like the woman behind the curtain is the one actually running the state. Oh, this is even beyond the palace walls. Truly unacceptable. Cabal.
Behind their protests, there was nothing but envy for the fact I was becoming more and more influential in court, and try as they might, they couldn't stop me. Some years later, Lee and I took a vacation to my hometown, which turned into days of feast and celebration. I had finally brought honor and status to my family. One evening, during a family dinner, Mom brought up the topic with my brothers.
Aren't you grateful for everything Wu did for us?
She just got lucky. Wu's not special, her husband is. Also, we never asked for the high ranks she gave us.
Mom flew into a rage, and the next day came to the palace to meet me.
Maybe it's time to give them a lesson, Your Highness.
And so I sent them to govern a faraway province where they couldn't bother my mother anymore. It seemed like at every turn I was reminded how my accomplishments were never enough because I was a woman. But what if I could use that to my advantage? Was there a way to stand out from other empresses? The answer was Feng Shen, a religious ceremony. It involved gathering our entire court, leaders and aristocrats from neighboring countries, staff, and an entire army, and all together do a pilgrimage to a sacred mountain. It was extremely expensive, and only 6 emperors out of 300 could afford it. Also, I added a small twist to it. After much planning, I brought up the idea to Lee and the council. Our borders are safe, the economy is good, people are pleased. I think we've earned it.
That is true, but Your Highness, we cannot allow the Empress to perform the second ritual. It is for us officials to do.
Oh, I knew they'd say that. Your Highness, the Emperor makes offerings at the top of the mountain to heaven, which represents masculine energy. At the bottom, the offerings are made to earth, which is feminine. It makes more sense for a woman to do it. Lee agreed and fired the advisor who opposed me, sending a clear message to the rest of them. And so, we gathered thousands of people and traveled for months to Mount Tai. I performed the rituals along with my husband, and we ended the procession with a huge banquet. And with that, I secured my place in history. Years went by. Lee and I governed as a team, but slowly his health started deteriorating. Everyone at court knew his time was near. As I sat at his bedside, we held hands, till slowly his got cold. I wanted to mourn, cry, and give up, but everything we built together would have crumbled if I did so. The council wanted my son on the throne, but he wasn't as capable as me and would have been a puppet to the advisors. So why give up power and risk the empire's stability when I could rule it just fine? Only because I was a woman? That never stopped me before. And so I did what I was good at, securing the throne and winning allies. At one point, some ex-officials started a rebellion against me. One of them wrote an entire manifesto making up all kinds of stories about me. It was read in court, and at the end, everyone was silent until I bursted out laughing. Who wrote that? So creative. We should have kept him. My army defeated the rebels swiftly, and then I addressed the council with an ultimatum. If anyone here thinks they are more capable than me, speak now. Otherwise, pledge your loyalty. My opponents stepped down one by one until eventually I was crowned as the first female emperor. The only time in history it ever happened. Other women have tried to rule as wives or widows, whispering in their son's or husband's ear, but none had the official title and absolute power. For another 15 years, I skillfully led my people. Try as they might, not even my greatest opponents could deny the fact I was a good leader. They attacked my character, painting me as a power-hungry, ruthless woman, but never once criticized my governing skills. Truly, my greatest flaw was my audacity to play the power games of men and win. Today, historians keep uncovering the remnants of my empire's riches and culture. I wanted to make China the greatest empire in the world, and under my guidance, at the time, it was. So don't let the circumstances you were born with determine who or what you can be.